All right, so we're going to do something interesting here. I'm going to do 6-4 before we do 6-3. So go ahead, flip your notes so you're over at 6-4. So both of these sections have to do with factoring trinomials again of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. In other words, there's a number in front of the x squared, and that makes it more difficult. Okay, there are two ways to do it. One of them is by grouping, and this is a method where there is a set way to do it. There are certain steps that you always do. 6-3, you would solve these exact same types of problems, but you would do them by guessing and checking. So it can get frustrating when you're guessing and checking. Now, eventually you want to be able to guess and check all of them. You don't want to be able to have to use this method that I'm about to teach you. But at the beginning, if you get stuck with guessing and checking, this is a method by grouping that will always work. Okay, so that's why I'm choosing to do it first. I think they're in the wrong order in the book. Okay, so let's just really quickly review how we did the grouping. We did this back in 6-1. So remember, grouping is you have more than 3 terms. So in this case, you have 4 terms. Remember, you group them 2 and 2. And then remember, you take a greatest common factor out of each group of 2. So if I GCF here, I can take an x out, which is going to leave me with y minus 2. Now remember, the key is I have to end up with a y minus 2 in here. So hopefully you can see if I'm going to end up with a positive y, I'm going to have to take out a negative 3. Because now when I divide this back in, a negative divided by a negative is going to be positive y, and then 6 divided by negative 3 is minus 2. Then remember how we looked at these as 2 big terms. What did they have in common? They had a y minus 2 in common, so those are now gone. We factored it out. And what's left is an x minus 3. Hopefully you remember the grouping method, because we are going to end up doing a grouping method for each of these now. So your first question might be, well, wait, I thought grouping method was on 4 terms or more than 3 terms, and we only have 3 terms here. Well, that's the key to these problems, is we are going to actually do a little trick that's going to change my trinomial into a polynomial of 4 terms. And we're going to do that by breaking up the middle term. So how do I know how to break it up? Listen carefully to these steps. In fact, if you wouldn't mind, don't write these down, and then you can pause the video and you can write it down when we're done. Here's how you figure out how to break up that middle term. You're going to take the first number and multiply it by the last number. 6 times negative 10 is negative 60. Now, you want to figure out 2 numbers that multiply together to get negative 60 and add together to get positive 11. So they need to so that means one has to be positive and one has to be negative. So we need to figure out what 2 numbers can I multiply together to get a negative 60 and somehow combine to get 11. Well, eventually you're going to come up with a 15 and a 4. 15 times 4 is 60, and you can see I can get an 11. Now I need a positive 11, which means this is going to have to be positive and this is going to have to be negative. So these are the 2 numbers that multiply together to get negative 60, which I got by multiplying the first and the third term, and add together to get the middle term. Now, what do I do with that? Watch carefully. I'm going to rewrite this problem as 6x squared plus 15x minus 4x minus 10. Look at what I've just done. I've used these 2 numbers, and I've split up this 11x, and I've made it into 15x minus 4x, which we can all agree is 11x. So, using these specific 2 numbers, I've changed my trinomial into a polynomial with 4 terms. And now you're going to use the grouping method, which we just reviewed, on these terms. So if I take a greatest common factor out of these 2, it's going to be 3x, which would leave me with 2 4x plus 5. You should be getting good at grouping by this point. What can I take as a GCF out of my second group that's going to give me positive 2x plus 5? Well, it's going to be a negative 2. Because when I divide that back in, I'm going to get positive 2x plus 5. Quickly looking at these as two big terms. What do they have in common? The 2x plus 5, which will leave in there 3x minus 2. And there is the factored form. If you were to FOIL these out, you would end up with this polynomial. All right, so let's go ahead and let's do the next one. So see, in my opinion, here's where it starts getting where actually guess and check, which we're going to do next, is going to be a little bit easier. Because if first of all, I need my calculator. If I multiply 16 times 15, I think I get 240. Yep, I get 240. Now, I need two numbers that multiply together to get positive 240 and add together to get negative 32. Yikes. So I've got to find those numbers. This is not going to be easy. So, for example, what multiplies together to get 240? Well, like 2 and 120. Well, I can't get a 32 out of there. 3 and 80. No way. How about 5? How many times does 5 go into 240? 48. So I still can't get a 32 out of there. How about 6? Well, 6 and 40. Still can't get a 32. I don't think 7 goes into there. 8 and 30. That's not going to work. So do you see my dilemma? What else multiplies together to get 240? How about 10 and 24? But can I get a 32 out of that? No. How about 12? How many times does 12 go into 240? And 20. Hello. Do you see where I can combine those and get a 32? But look how long it took me to find that. Now, you might be better at that than I am. Maybe not. So these are my two numbers that multiply together to get 240, which is 16 times 15. And they add together to get negative 32 as long as both of them are negative. And if I'm going to multiply them together to get a positive 240, they both have to be negative. So now it's not so bad. It's just finding those two numbers. So let's do 16x squared minus 12x minus 20x plus 15. So remember, we use these two numbers and we split up the negative 32 into negative 12 and negative 20. And by the way, if you flip these and had it negative 20 first and negative 12 at the end, you're going to get the same answer at the end. No big deal. All right, so here we go. Let's GCF out of this first group. Well, I'm looking at a 4x coming out, which will leave me with 4x minus 3. Again, I'm not going to go really slow here because you should be really good at this. Let's take out a negative 5 here because that's going to give me negative 20 divided by negative 5. So that's 4x minus 3. So now those are two big terms that have a 4x minus 3 in common, which leaves me, when they're gone, with a 4x minus 5. All right, are you getting it? Maybe it's time to try one on your own. So anytime you want, just go ahead and pause the video. All right, so let's look at this one. So if I multiply 3 times 3, I get 9. So what multiplies together to get 9 and adds together to get 10? So that's obviously going to be 9 and 1. So let's split it up into 3x squared plus 9x plus 1x plus 3. Now that there's 4 terms, I'm going to group them. Oh, this is an interesting one. I'm going to take a 3x out of the first group, which leaves me with x plus 3. Now I have to take something out. Well, what do these have in common? Well, you might say, well, they have nothing in common. Well, they always have something in common, and that is a positive 1, and something's got to come out. which leaves me with x plus 3. So my final answer here would be x plus 3. That's what the two big terms have in common, times 3x plus 1. All right. Again, maybe you should pause and try the next couple on your own here. So for this one, if I multiply 2 times negative 28, I get negative 56. So I need two things that multiply together to get negative 56 and add together to get 1. Well, 56 is 8 and 7. And since I need a positive 1, it's going to be a positive 8 and a negative 7. So rewriting it, I'm going to get 2x squared plus 8x minus 7x minus 28. All right, here we go. So I'm going to take a 2x out of the first group, which leaves me with x plus 4. What am I going to take out of the second group? Well, hopefully you see it's going to be a negative 7. Because when I divide that back in, I'm again going to get x plus 4. And remember, you're going to get the same thing here. So out comes an x plus 4, which leaves me with 2x minus 7. How about this one? Well, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. So what two numbers can I multiply together, the negative 2, and add together to get negative 1? So obviously it's going to be 2 and 1. And since I have to add those together to get a negative 1, it's going to be negative 2. So 2x squared minus 2x plus 1x minus 1. Grouping 2 and 2, what comes out of the first group of 2? A 2x, make sure you take out both the 2 and the x, which leaves me with x minus 2x divided by 2x is 1. And again, something's got to come out of here. It's going to be a positive 1. It would be a negative 1 if I had to flip the signs, but I don't. Which leaves me with x minus 1 times 2x plus 1. So for G, actually for G, H, and I, you can see that you've got to take a GCF out of there first in all of the cases. So what is my greatest common factor? Because remember, that's the first thing you should always do. My greatest common factor for these three terms looks like it's going to be a 3 and an x, which would leave me with 6x squared minus 7x, and then minus 20. So again, at this point, I would pause the video, finish this off, and come back. So if I multiply 6 times negative 20, that's going to give me negative 120. So let's see, I need to find two numbers that multiply together to get negative 120 and add together to get negative 7. I'm thinking it's going to be 15 and 8. And since they need to add to get a negative 7, it's going to be negative 15. So I'm going to kind of keep the 3x there. I'm going to bring it down in a minute. So 6x squared minus 15x plus 8x minus 20. So again, the 3x I'm going to worry about in a minute. Here we go. Let's group. Out of the first group, I'm going to take a 3x, which would leave me with 2x minus 5. Out of the second group, I'm going to take out a positive 4, which leaves me with 2x minus 5. So I would have 2x minus 5 times 3x plus 4. And let's not forget the original 3x that I factored out as a GCF. All right, hopefully you're getting the hang of this. If you look at all of these terms, you can factor out a y. So let's do that first. 6x squared minus 7x minus 5. All right, so now we got to figure out, what am I going to break up this negative 7 as? Well, 6 times negative 5 is negative 30. I need two numbers that multiply together to get negative 30 and add together to get 7. Well, let's see, 2 and 15, 3 and 10. And because I need the 7 to be negative, it's going to be a negative 10. So again, I'm going to forget about the y for a minute. I'll come back and get it. So it's going to be 6x squared plus 3x minus 10x minus 5. Group. Factor out a GCF. What is it? It's 3x. When I take that out, you can see I'm going to get 2x plus 1, 3x divided by 3x. What am I going to have to take out of this second group to get the 2x plus 1? I'm going to have to take out a negative 5. And you can see that that does give me 2x plus 1. So again, thinking of this as two big terms, they have the 2x plus 1 in common. With those gone, that leaves me with 3x minus 5. And don't forget about your y from the beginning GCF. All right, last one. GCF. Well, it looks like it's going to be a 2y cubed. That's going to give me 6y squared plus 5y minus 21. All right, so if I multiply 6 and negative 21, I get negative 126. So I need two things that multiply together to get negative 126 and add together to get 5. I have no idea. So I don't even know what goes into 126. Well, I know 3 goes into there. 126 divided by 3. So it's 3 and 42. That's not going to help me. I know 6 goes into there. 6 goes into there. Oops. 21. I need a 5, not a 15. Does 8 go into there? 126 divided by 8. Yep, 8 goes into there. So it's 8 and 16. That's not going to go. Does 9 go into there? 126 divided by 9. 14. Aha! Yikes. So 9 and 14 multiply together to get negative 126, and negative 9 and positive 14 add together to get a positive 5. See, that took me forever. All right, so let's rewrite this. 6y squared minus 9y plus 14y minus 21. You should be like a robot at this point. Group them 2 and 2. GCF out of this 2, so that's going to be 3y, which will leave me with 2y minus 3. What's going to come out of here? It looks like a plus 7. Which leaves me with 2y minus 3. Thinking of this as two big terms, we'll have 2y minus 3 times 3y plus 7. And don't forget about the 2y cubed GCF we took out at the beginning. And there is factoring trinomials by grouping.